Hello and welcome back to the Self-Wealth Real Estate Podcast with your host, Luke Boron. Today is a bit of a different episode. I am interviewing Allan Orasuk. He is my construction manager in the Ottawa area. Today we're talking all things construction, vetting contractors, managing flips, tips for that, managing conversions, duplex conversions, coach house builds, and just tips in dealing with contractors, how we do it, best practices. And I think there's things that are useful both for experienced investors and for new investors to learn. So if you're interested in the construction side of investing and knowing how to manage projects yourself, or at least understanding what goes on in it so that you can renovate investment properties efficiently, listen up, take care. I think you'll enjoy it. Welcome to the show, Allan.
Thanks, Luke. Good to be here.
So, as I said in the intro, we're going to be talking about construction today. You mostly work on our projects in Ottawa, and you have a lot of experience. Can you tell us your background, kind of like before you got into construction and what you do in construction, kind of everything before you worked for us?
So I started my career working for family in carpentry, and then did that for quite some time. I was pretty young. I was with family, and then after that I got into commercial construction. I did projects from dental offices to hospital additions here in Ottawa, and I worked in commercial for quite some time. And then after that I moved into general contracting residential on my own. I started my own little kind of corporation and did that for a little bit, and then I was eventually poached off the tools by a company called Astro Kitchen and Bath here in Ottawa, and I did some project management / consulting, and then moved on through a couple design build firms, just basements, RDM Design and Build, Amstead, and Ottawa General Contractors, until eventually I ended up here with you.
Yep, and yeah, it's been, I guess, almost 3.5 years we've been together, over 3 years together.
Yeah.
And it's been great, Allan. It's been great having you on the team. How do you feel about that? Because I know you had your carpentry ticket, right? So, you're a carpenter and you were poached off the tools. How do you feel about, being on the tools versus off the tools and managing projects?
I like being on the tools. I do. I really do like it. I was eventually poached off the tools because my boss at the time in commercial noticed that I was able to see the bigger picture. So I would pull clients aside a lot and say, like, on the plans, this isn't going to work, or it's going to look stupid. And then I would sell them on something else. So, I mean, my boss at the time saw dollar signs, really, to say the least, because I was able to upsell clients and stuff like that. And I was able to communicate, but I was also kind of able to see the big picture. And then, his translation to it was just, I was too smart to be on the tools, kind of thing. Some of the smartest people I've ever met are on the tools, to be honest, but he just said my mind was different, and I kind of agree with him. I'm more of a people person, but there is a big part of me that does miss the tools, as you know. Putting the trusses on that house and Navin recently, it woke the spirit in me.
Yeah, I like getting in and doing some of it sometimes. It's just, when you have so much else to do, it's not as fun as it could be. It's like when you actually have time to relax and do something, take on a project yourself, it's nice. But when you kind of have to do it and your phone's blowing up the whole day, that's when it's more stressful being on the tools than otherwise. But I do find it therapeutic to build something with your own hands. As you know, I enjoy it, and obviously you're better at it than I am. But yeah, that's cool, because there's people who study construction management, right? They go to university or college, they study construction management, and then they get out into the world, and sometimes they have trouble finding jobs, but also they're managing guys who have been on the tools for, some decades, and they're fresh out of college and they've never worked construction. They don't, all they've learned is what they learned in the books in school. And I think it's very practical to come from actually working on the tools to moving to construction management, which is what you're doing now, project management, construction management. because you have that experience, you actually understand what it's like, and you can relate to the people on site.
Yeah, it's definitely worked to my advantage. Being on the tools, moving to the other side of the tools, it's definitely moved to my advantage in terms of, cost estimating, how long a job should take, all those kinds of things, and especially Ottawa's not a big, huge city. So a lot of the people that I have on our sites, I've actually been on the tools with before. So
yeah, and there's an element there because you've been on the tools with them. They know what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
And that's something. I mean, you've seen it from me as well. Again, I don't get on the tools often, but sometimes I will jump in and do something that the guys on site don't want to do, to kind of show them an example. And I think there's an element of if the boss is willing to do it, you can do it too, kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
Like, oh, this is too hard. Well, okay, then let me show you how it's done, because I'm not afraid of hard work, right? And I know you're the same way. So sometimes it's being like an example of like, I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. And with your background on the tools kind of shows that.
Yeah, exactly.
So some of the stuff I wanted to talk about, the focus today is renovations and builds cheaper, faster, with fewer problems. So one of the main things I want to talk about, I think one of the most important things, is finding and vetting contractors. Can you tell me a bit about an investor who's looking to do renovations should find and vet contractors?
What I found successful at first, because I came from a very much design build background, and it was a little bit of an adjustment working with you and your team. And it was, when I came here, it was everything needed to be fixed cost. However, when we're doing a flip, you can't necessarily see everything all at once. Like, you may pull down some drywall and see, oh, well, there's, 14 wires in the wall and none of them are in a junction box and none of them are moretted, kind of thing. And then it's like, things just balloon. So at that point, what was happening a lot of the time was then our costs were ballooning as well, because, someone's there, they have fixed costs, they've got a client lined up for next week. So they're going to charge us more because they're now pushing that client back. So kind of what you and I came up with was maybe approaching some of these contractors that were GCs and were finding work steadily, but approaching them and kind of negotiating a day rate that works for them, and kind of saying that, hey, we'll keep you busy for the next, couple months, and then see where it goes. And then after that, then following through and checking in on their work throughout the job, whether that's, following up in person or setting up, some cheap Wise cameras on site, see when they come, when they leave, asking for updated pictures, also watching how they work as well. If it looks like it shouldn't be done that way, there's a good chance that it shouldn't be done that way, kind of thing. And doing your homework. If they're doing something you've never seen done before, like, reach out to someone that you may or may not know, or know someone that does that work, and send them pictures, and use like as much of your network to determine if it's right or not.
Yeah.
What I would suggest.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Let's talk about specifically about flipping. What if an investor's looking to flip, how should they manage the project? How should this work? Give us a rundown.
So if someone's looking to flip, like, immediately is do your homework up front, like, of the property. I mean, I would suggest look at your comparables in the neighborhood, see what's selling, what's not selling, and then what rooms in the house are redone that are selling and selling fast. So I know that you do a lot of that homework for us, Luke. However, it's, sourcing your materials as cheap as possible, looking at the floors and assessing, hey, I can do the floor here and I cannot do the floor here and get away with it. Clearly you probably want to do a good coat of paint throughout the entire house. It just makes it look fresh and new. And that's that's going to be a big difference, and it's going to make a big difference. It's going to show really differently as well. And then, like your major rooms, bathrooms, kitchens, take a look at that and then see in those spaces, well, the tub isn't that bad and the tile surround isn't that bad. Maybe we call a reglazer and get a reglazer to spray the tub surround and spray the tub. And then at that point, you've got people walking through, and we've actually experienced this where they're like, hey, the tub's brand new and the tile looks great, kind of thing. So these are all things that you can use to your advantage. Kitchens, if the kitchen's like solid oak or, a solid wood or something like that, maybe you can get away with sanding and painting it. Maybe, sometimes the solution isn't always ripping it out and doing it all fresh all over again. Sometimes the easiest, most cost-effective solution is doing like the bare minimum, or just painting it and making it look good. Changing the handles in a kitchen can go a long way as well. And then the exterior, like the curb appeal, this is all something that is new for me working with you. As before I was construction, I never dealt with landscaping, so it's all kind of new. But yeah, like just something as simple as making sure the grass is cut, and those kinds of things can go a long way. Flowers, simple hostas out front, downspouts, eaves troughs, very, very, very small detail, but if they're plugged with leaves and anything, it can be catastrophic. You can fix up your entire basement, get it looking good, and then it floods. And we had it happen before, So I know that that's a lot, but I mean, these are the things that I think we look for.
Yeah. I think, and flipping can be more difficult in some ways because sometimes you don't know where to stop. And there is a right balance. So we do a mix of renovations, which makes it harder. Certain people imagine a flip and they just imagine taking kind of a rundown house and doing everything to it almost like new, and it's beautiful and new. And we do that sometimes, but we also do much lighter renovations on other houses too. And sometimes we're trying to match the price point of the area, keeping the price point reasonable, because especially in today's market, things that are at kind of the lower price points for the area, if possible, tend to sell better or can move faster. But you have to do enough work that it's going to, pass inspections, that people are going to be happy enough with the work when we're doing those. So I like what you're saying about keeping kitchen cabinets. A little tip there too is, first of all, you can always put new countertops or quartz countertops on top of them, throw a backsplash on. But if you're painting them anyways, it's not a big difference to pick a modern color of cabinets. For example, we paint a lot of our kitchens, we paint the lowers in sage green when we're painting and the uppers in white, because that's an in color, right? And usually with the sage green, we'll do black handles on those. These are usually not higher end homes, but now we're in a modern color. It's updated versus just going white with everything. It's going to look a little more special and a little different. So I think that kind of stuff is worth it. What is very difficult is knowing when to stop on renovations. Like, should I pull out this kitchen? Even if it is a decent oak kitchen, but in a, say a bigger house in a nicer neighborhood that we want to hit a higher price point, we may not want to paint that, especially if we want to maybe enlarge the kitchen or add an island and make it bigger. So at that point, we may be tearing that out in that price point of home. Whereas, a more simple one, maybe like a starter home, a condo townhouse, we may be keeping, the cabinets that are there and just painting them, trying to make do with what it is, because the cost of the renovations won't justify, you won't be able to get the higher price point for the area. One thing that I wanted to talk about there was a little bit to simplify things. Let's say we're taking a medium range home and it's in so rough shape that it's going to be stripped down. Not the drywall, but let's say it's stripped down to the drywall. So your finished floor is pulled up, your kitchen's gone, your bathroom's gone. You're keeping everything in the same place, right? So this is essentially, I would still consider this essentially a cosmetic reno. You're not getting behind the walls, you're not redoing all the electrical, you're not redoing all the plumbing, but all of your pretty finishes are gone. Your baseboard's gone, your floors are gone, your kitchen's gone, your bathroom's gone. What's the order that you do that in. How do you tackle that kind of project? Let's say first you do demo, you've selected all this stuff, it's all gone, bins are gone, nice clean site, swept up. What's next? And give us the breakdown of kind of what order you would do that in. Who would you hire? What trades, what contractors? Would you just hire a general contractor to do the whole thing? And how would you line up ordering materials for this? So give us a full kind of breakdown walkthrough of a project like this for a flip.
So what I would do in that situation when you're walking into something, your demo is completely done, and now you're lining up a contractor. As I said, I would find a contractor as I've vetted already, or that I'm working on vetting. Negotiate maybe a day rate for the things of I'm gonna have you, for X amount of dollars per day, which is 8 hours for the day, and you're going to go around, patch all the walls, get all the walls ready for paint and stuff like that. And then at the same time, reach out to an electrician to go around and change maybe all the plugs. Because maybe the plugs aren't Decora, they're the old style, and upgrade to Decora, and then just take a look around for any obvious electrical issues. And once the walls are all ready, then I would get my paint done and go through and paint the place. Especially your ceilings, and at least one coat on the walls, and then you reach back out to that general contractor, get the floors done, and get once the floors are done, then get your cabinets installed, and do your trim, and then get your finished electrical in after that, like your lights, countertops, backsplash, all that kind of stuff, and then your final coat of paint, and then you're out of there, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
It's you don't want to be painting over top of finished floors, that kind of stuff. You want to get your walls ready for paint, because there's obviously some patching you need to do. So I mean, that would be kind of the order in that, and that's taking the fact that there's maybe no plumbing, no HVAC to do, because then that would be another step that you would need to do before kind of getting your walls ready, because maybe you got to cut trenches, maybe you got to do this kind of thing. But
we run into a lot of houses that were built without ceiling lights in the living room. So that is something very often that we get the electricians to run pot lights into the living room ceiling. It's relatively inexpensive for the effect you get, because I don't know why, but almost all these houses we deal with, they just never had ceiling lights in the living room. And instead of just doing one middle ceiling light, which I don't find nearly as attractive, we put pot lights in. The other thing we've done on kind of homes where we're trying to keep the budget down and we don't want to be patching the ceiling, depending on how the electrician's able to fish, is it's very common in those homes that don't have a ceiling light, they do have a plug that operates on a switch for a lamp. And so that means the power going to that plug operates already on a switch. So the easiest way is to have the electrician in the same joist cavity up and down as the plug. You can run a wire up, tie it into that plug that gets powered by the switch, and then put a wall sconce on, usually double head wall sconce so it's enough light. And that way, the same switch, when you come in the room, you turn that on, it's behind the wall. There's no additional holes in it usually, because you're able to fish straight from the plug up to the new hole you cut where your sconce is going in. So there's no holes to patch. And you can have a light that goes on in the room. It's not as good as pot lights in the ceiling, but it is an inexpensive and easy way to fish a wire up. And so we've done that before, and I find that it's an easy way to get light in the ceiling. So I mean, you made it sound so easy managing all of that. Now, you talk about hiring a contractor for these projects. What tasks are not usually done by the contractor? Do you think an investor should just hire a GC that has their own trades and they just do everything? Or do you think there's enough savings that it's worth sourcing separate trades for certain tasks? And which tasks would you separate out?
Well, like an investor, I wouldn't suggest to hire a GC that just manages the whole project for you. I mean, you can, it's just that those margins aren't going to be there that you're looking for. I admittedly, it's going to be less of a headache, being that the GC is taking on the responsibility. However, you're paying a lot of margin. You're paying a lot of management fees and like overhead at the end of the day. So what I would suggest is finding like just a general contractor, or so then I see that, for lack of a better term, like, I mean, just a carpenter or like a handyman, a guy that can do a lot of things, like patch walls, install baseboard, install flooring, maybe like take a light fixture down and put a light fixture back up, that kind of stuff. Maybe some light plumbing repair or something like that. Install cabinets. All around kind of well-rounded guy when it comes to carpentry, or, in that aspect. But anything that's like electrical, hire an electrician. Anything that's plumbing, hire a plumber. Anything that's like HVAC, obviously hire an HVAC technician. I say that just because, like, down the line, the buyer is going to look at this potential property that they're buying and ask, was there an ESA? If it was clear that a bathroom or a drain moved more than, 10, 12 inches, was there a building permit, and did a plumber do the work, kind of thing? And then same thing with HVAC and gas. Like, I mean, you don't want someone messing with gas these days that isn't licensed, kind of thing. But yeah, like, I mean, in terms of specialty trades, like, if you're going to be installing, 4 sheets of drywall, yeah, maybe get the guy that can do the floors and the general handyman to do that. But if you're installing 200 sheets of drywall, then maybe reach out to a drywall guy that specializes in drywall, and you'll probably get a better rate than the other guy, and it'll be done a lot faster. Same thing with siding, like simple siding repairs, doing one wall on a house. Yeah, a general guy can do that. But an entire house, I would suggest to get a siding guy. At that point, there's a good chance that some of these GC guys, like these general guys, these handyman guys that you do have working for you, they do specialize in something. Like, for instance, Frank that works with us, he can do flooring, he can do drywall, he can do this, he can do that, but he specializes in siding, so we've used him to do siding, kind of thing. So yeah, kind of thing. So that's where you may luck out as well.
Yeah, as you find different crews, you may bring them in for different projects. Like, I know, when I was flipping early on in Toronto, I had someone who did, they just installed flooring. That's all they did, and they were inexpensive. So I'd have kind of the general or the contractor on site, but I would bring someone else in to do the flooring because they, they had a set price per square foot, and it was cheap, and they whipped it out super quick because that's all they did. So I brought someone else in for that. If I didn't have that person, that contractor on site could have done it easily. But because of the speed and the price, they were worth kind of separating out. Tiling as well. Tiling can be something you outsource, but also, as long as you have a competent enough, essentially carpenter, they can tile as well. Make sure you understand, this is something, some of what we're talking about is making sure you have to make sure you kind of understand enough about construction to make sure it's being done right, or that you look it up, or that you bring in somebody to kind of help give you some advice. Take some pictures, send it to someone in construction, send it to a friend, another investor, like, oh, they're tiling this on regular drywall. I wouldn't recommend that, even green board, use cement board, or water, use waterproofing. Make sure it's going to last, because you also don't want to, one, you don't want the liability, but you also don't want to just provide cheap flips like people talk about. That doesn't mean doing everything in a house. We often do not everything in the house, but the work that we try to do on a house, we try to make sure it's done right. I also wanted to mention the kind of general contractor or handyman that we're talking on site. These are typically small companies with 2 to 4 people on them. So it's usually, we're not hiring for a flip. We wouldn't hire one person to do it all by themselves. It's inefficient with one person. They often need a hand with things, and it's too slow. It's much too slow. Your cost of capital, borrowing, carrying, it's going to get eaten into. So you need a contractor who's going to have, at least, in my opinion, for not a big place, at least 2 people, and they're going to dedicate their time to this. Speaking of dedicating their time to this, I want to ask you, what would you do if you hire a contractor? And, when you talk about day rate, I think that's excellent, but I don't think that's something people should do early on with a contractor they don't know, right? That it's something when you get comfortable with the contractor and you trust that they're honest and you know they show up and do the work they're going to do. So let's say you have a job quoted and the contractor shows up for a couple of days, leaves for a couple of days, shows up for a couple of days, leaves for a week, always has excuses. They're going to different projects, right? They're kind of, they're getting a deposit on another project, putting a bit of work in, then coming back to yours. And what do you do in that scenario?
So what I've done from experience is basically like sent them an email saying that, I need these timelines hit. For instance, like if I've got a general guy on site, I'm still hiring an electrician, I'm still hiring a plumber, I'm still hiring an HVAC guy. So at that point, then I kind of use my other trades as leverage in that situation. Is that, listen, I have a window of this date to this date to get my electrician or my plumber in here. I need all of this completed by this date. This is your notice kind of thing. And then give them notice and then follow up. If they don't come to site and then it doesn't reach that timeline, then you give them notice as this is your 10-day notice kind of thing. If I don't see this amount of progress in the next 10 days, I'm going to have you removed from the job kind of thing. Because construction law is kind of, it protects the contractor in Ontario. Let's face it, it is what it is. So at that point, you have to use your, like your documentation, your email as much as you can, and then, set the rules. At that point, as a client, a paying client, you can set the rules. There's no unrealistic, it can be kind of like nothing unreal. Like I need the job done in 2 days and they haven't even drywalled. Like, that's not going to happen. But at the end of the day, if you say, listen, I need to see it drywalled by the end of not this week, next week kind of thing, that's realistic. And then when that doesn't happen, then at that point, that gives you grounds to remove them from site
and terminate the contract you have with them.
Terminate the contract,
Yeah.
And at that point, any money that was owed to them is then not owed to them at that point, and then start looking for someone else. We've ran into this before.
Okay. What would you say in that case? Let's say you send that first email, they're still not showing up. What do you think about trying to incentivize them financially? Either saying, hey, if you have this done by these dates, then I will pay you an extra this amount, which as the investor, you're probably thinking, oh, I shouldn't need to do that. And you're probably right. But sometimes being right is not as important as getting the job done. Or the opposite side of that, Allan, is, hey, if you don't have this done by this date, I'm going to take this much off for the remainder of the contract, or this much every day that you're not complete. What do you think of kind of putting in those financial incentives?
That's a great way to make people jump, money talks, BS walks kind of thing, as the classic saying goes. And that comes down to your budget. And that does go both ways. You can position that both ways. If you have it done by this date, I will throw in a bonus of $100. If you don't have it done by this date, every day past this date, then you're penalized $250 per day. That goes both ways, to protect you on the back end. Another thing I would suggest is obviously don't pay them until you inspect the work kind of thing, like even if they try and say, well, give me this much up front and then I'll get it done and then you could pay the balance then. No, the money doesn't leave until you start seeing some magic happen on site is my suggestion.
Yeah. And I think it's important that either you're on site checking in on the work or somebody you trust or somebody else takes detailed pictures because, I've managed projects remotely and contractors are very good at taking pictures of, zoomed in on the specific things they've done and not showing the whole space. So, you have walls ripped open and everything, but this little section of walls painted, things like that. Oh, that may be extreme, but, they're not showing everything else wrong with it. They're just showing part of it. So it looks like you have more progress than you do. And if somebody else unrelated to the contractor was showing up, taking pictures, from all angles or a video of all angles, or if you're going yourself, you're going to see what's actually being done. So it's nice to get pictures from contractors on site. It is helpful, especially if a contractor does communicate well that way and can kind of send you regular updates. But you can't rely on those alone because, you need somebody unrelated to go. Now, you were talking about kind of not paying before. What do you think is a fair pay structure? Because I know from one side, we see a lot of contractors who've been burned by homeowners who, they start a project and then, or maybe they get their deposit and then the homeowner's maybe not happy with something and they don't get paid in full. Contractors have been burned. On the other side, you have bad contractors who, they'll take deposits and then never really do the work, or, they do part of it, they never finish, and, you paid them a lot more than the work they've done. What do you think for, let's say, that same example of a cleaned out flip, demoed from a cosmetic level, and a contractor is going to start and they're responsible for everything except the sub-trades. What's a decent pay structure? What's a fair pay structure?
So this is, again, where I'm going to kind of share a little bit of knowledge. Well, so in something like that, where a contractor is coming on site, I would highly suggest, if you are an investor and you are flipping a property, don't ask a contractor to provide material. Provide the material yourself. You're going to save a lot of money, as they're going to mark it up. I mean, it's only fair. If, you're going to go shopping for someone and spend the time, they're going to ask for a margin, kind of thing. However, if you are asking them to provide materials, when I say materials, I mean finished materials like flooring, faucets, light fixtures, vanities, cabinets. Those are the materials that I feel that as an investor, in order to save money, you should provide them. Hard construction material like 2x4s, drywall, screws, all that stuff. Yeah, the contractor definitely is going to have to supply those and has worked those into their quote. That being said, there is ways around that too. You can offer them a Home Depot card that you monitor, and then they have to give the receipts off of it, and other ways that you can manage them buying things and bringing them to site. But if they were providing any material at all, I mean, it's fair for them to ask for up to a 40% down payment up front. Now, the thing about that is, to protect yourself as a homeowner, investor, anything like that is the contract, essentially. If you're just, signing the back of a bar napkin, 40% kind of thing, there's a good chance they're probably going to rip you off. But if they're very well structured into what you're signing, and sometimes even the ones that are, pretty good at conning people, will have a contract. But you really got to read it. You got to dig into it. You got to see what I look for in signing a contract, on your behalf, Luke, or for my own, is there's not just protection for the contractor, there's also protection as a homeowner. And that's what you're going to look for in that contract, right. The contractor and the contract kind of thing, is that there's protection on the back end, not just for the contractor, but also for you as, the investor, homeowner, however you want to put it, kind of thing.
Yes.
So that's my suggestion. With that, I've seen up to 40%. I've seen 30% and then 25% first day of construction. So before even a hammer swung, sometimes people have gotten 55% of the money. But if their contract is structured right and they show up and they seem organized, I don't mind doing that, because it looks like, it's going to get done, and fast, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's my answer to that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, and I've gotten scammed by contractors. I remember years ago, I got scammed by a roofer up in Aurelia. I paid him the money for materials and nothing ever happened, right? And he actually got the money for materials twice. He straight up scammed me. I found out he was arrested later for fraud, which is good to find out years later. Not for me in particular, but he had done this to a lot of people. So, but I had another roofer who was going to start, because I didn't know the guy, and he wanted money for materials for starting. And what we did instead was he put the order in at the place where he was ordering materials, and we paid for the materials. We called in and paid with it delivery to our project, and that way he didn't have to come out of pocket for the materials. But so we didn't need much of a deposit there for him, because he wasn't out much. What I've seen done as well, it's important to set expectations with contractors. So having that contract, and this that lays out when things will be paid, how long you have to pay, because we find this too with a lot of smaller contractors, like even we have a system, we're set up as a company. We have a system. Invoices get sent in. They get sent to, our accounting team, and we have X amount of time to pay. And we try to pay, we usually say we pay in about a week of when we get the invoices, give or take. It's what we aim for, sometimes 2 weeks, not more than that. But we let the contractors know that. And it's very, very frustrating when you work with a new contractor and the day they send you the invoice, they call you and text you 25 times. Like, I need to get paid. I need the money. I can't afford gas. And it's just, I find I can't work with those kinds of contractors in general when they're hounding you for kind of same day payment. It's not feasible to work with them as you're doing volume. And sometimes you can work with some of those people to save money if you're willing to deal with that and pay them right away. Send them an e-transfer right when they're done for the day. Something else I've seen kind of setting expectations with a new contractor, you want to make sure they're going to show up with their crew and start, especially for something like demo. They're not putting out a lot of money up front. So, I would even consider like, yes, we might have, 20, 40% the deposits, but those don't get paid. Like, I'll pay a 5% deposit when you guys are on site, doing demo. It was like something like that before you guys are on site and doing demo. Now that you're on site and doing demo, then you get the additional amount of the deposit. I need to make sure you're legit and you show up with your tools and your team and actually show up and start the job. Because if you don't show up on the day you told me, I had to finish another project, you might actually be starting 2 months from now. And because I've given you money, the 40% or 20%, whatever it might be, upfront, I feel tied to you. I feel like, oh shoot, I can't fire him, go find someone else. I've given him too much money. So sometimes it's important just to make sure a new contractor is going to show up and start. And that gives you some confidence that at least you're not going to get, significantly delayed on the project.
And there's a few things you can do. Like if the contractor is supposed to provide material and they're asking for a 40% deposit, then you can, and they seem legit, you can ask them, listen, I'll give you that money, but can you get the material on site first? As soon as the material is on site, then I'll give you the deposit, kind of thing. If it's a labor only contract where they're not like for demo, or you have all the material on site and all you need is labor only, like a lot of the time I shy away from giving deposits when it's labor only. What I try and do is negotiate. Like, listen, you're going to start on a Monday. By the time Wednesday rolls around, hey, I'll throw you, a couple hundred or 1,000 or something like that, just once you get rolling, kind of thing. And then that should float you until payroll hits you or something of that nature, or try and build up a milestone thing. Like, once you've demoed the first floor, then, of this $3,000, I'll pay you $1,000, kind of thing, or something of that nature. And then go and inspect the work. And again, like, I can't stress enough, if you don't have construction experience, lean on your network. There's got to be someone within your family, within your friends group that you trust and that you can bring on site and have them look at their work. Keep in mind that, in construction, there's a million different ways to skin a cat. So I'm sure there's going to be comments to why did they do it this way? And why are they doing it like that? And everything like that. And just keep in mind that at the end of the day, if the drywall's ripped off the wall and that's what you were looking for, then that's when it's done. You know what I mean? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Are you a savvy real estate investor looking to maximize your profits? Well, if you're buying properties off the MLS, you're not making as much as you could. The most lucrative way to boost your bottom line is by acquiring investment properties off market. By buying privately off market, you're able to save tens of thousands. Now, the problem is finding off market properties is really hard and takes a lot of time, effort, and money to do. Bliss is your number one source, delivering exclusive deals that you will not find on the MLS directly to your inbox. Bliss's extensive network and insider connections gives you access to properties that are not publicly listed and at a discount. We've helped hundreds of investors across Ontario and BC source the right properties at the right time for their portfolio. Buying assignable purchase contracts through Bliss at a discount helps facilitate higher returns, lower competition, and deals that align perfectly with your investment goals. From start to finish, Bliss's world-class team of real estate professionals makes the process seamless for all investors. If you're ready to elevate your real estate investment strategy, visit us at offmarketbliss.ca to join our buyers list and start receiving exclusive off-market deals directly to your inbox. The most profitable opportunities await, and they're exclusive to you and our valued buyers list members. For your next project, check out Bliss, the go-to source for off-market deals.
Yeah, an example of that, like different contractors decide to put floors down before kitchen cabinets or after kitchen cabinets. So certain contractors, they like to have their floors down, and then the kitchen cabinets sit on your floor. Other contractors, they'll install the cabinets first, and then your floors kind of finish up to the feet of the cabinets, and then your kick plate goes on and hides. So there's no floor under your kitchen cabinets. I prefer the floor to run under it. I prefer to do it in that order. But we work with contractors who do both. Like some do it one way, some do the other. Neither are wrong. There's not only one way to do some of these things. So if you see, oh, you put the cabinets down, now the floors are going to have to butt up against it. That's not my preferred way to do it. But if that's how the contractor wants to do it, I'm okay with that, right? And so understanding that there are different ways to do things, and they can both be right, it is good as well. Let's talk a little bit about conversions. You've done several for us: conversions, coach houses, duplexes, triplexes. If someone's taking on one of these like permitted, legal addition, adding a unit to a house, tell me about the process for that and dealing with contractors for that.
So the process that I've dealt with that is essentially like finding like a GC that you trust that's going to be on site again, and then also scoping it out. So like you know you're going to need extensive electrical work, you're going to need extensive plumbing work and HVAC, and then using your leads. If you don't have someone that you've used, well, not your leads, using kind of like your team. If you don't have an HVAC, electrician, and plumber, then maybe ask your contractor that you've worked with in the past or handyman, hey, have you ever worked with an electrician, plumber, or HVAC guy that you can suggest that I maybe send off these plans to for pricing? And then, use, Google and those kind of things, and then start playing comparison. Someone comes in at $28,000 to rewire your house, and then someone comes in at, 22, and then you got another guy at 13. I would be more interested at the guy that's at 22, and in the middle around there, and figure out why, or even talk to the guy that's 13 and be like, hey, like, how did you come to this? And figure that out. Same thing with plumbers. I mean, you're gonna kind of gauge, like, if you've got, for instance, a duplex, and you've got some work that you need done. Like the going rate for fixtures is probably around $800 to $900 per fixture. So in a bathroom, so it should be within that wheelhouse, depending on how far we're moving stacks and stuff like that as well. It's kind of using your network to determine what's the best way, and then proceed it from there. And then at that point, then ask your general contractor that you have on site, that you have going in to do the demo and do these things. Let me know a week before I need to call an electrician, or do a walkthrough with your electrician, plumber, and HVAC guy that you've selected on the property. And then they'll talk to your general contractor and they'll tell him, like, hey, when you reach this point, call me, and go from there, and use these guys to work together. Cause that's essentially what they are. This project is not like if you look at it as kind of like a baseball game, they got to come together as a team to win and make it look good. So you use these guys as your team, kind of thing, is what I would suggest.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it keeps coming back. What we talk about is that we have kind of a reliable jack of all trades construction crew on site that can handle a lot of and I mean, as you said earlier, these guys are mainly carpenters in some form, right? Because that's kind of, they might be framing some walls. They can do, basic drywalling. They can do the finished carpentry, cabinet install, baseboards, doors, things like that. So generally, carpenters have those kinds of skills. So it's usually carpenters who kind of do general work. And those are kind of our main eyes and ears on site. hey, the furnace install is supposed to happen today, but nobody showed up. Okay, good to know. And they're also on site, so we're not waiting around for the furnace installer because we're expecting our general to be on site all day, right? Or have their crew working all day. They're working on something else, and the electrician's coming in and they're working there as well. So they're kind of our eyes and ears. Now, dealing with the inspectors for the permits, would you let that kind of contractor, jack of all trades, be the person dealing with the building permit inspector, or would you want that? Do you think that the homeowner should be coordinating directly as much as possible with the building inspector?
So it depends on how much you trust that jack of all trades guy. 100% off the top, though, I like out of the gate, I would suggest that all inspection reports are emailed to you as the homeowner, that you receive them so that you can review them. And then if you have questions, you can either ask, the guy that you have on site, your plumber or your HVAC guy. Electrical is a different authority. So that's something that the electrician will handle completely for you. They'll handle all those inspections, which is great. But and then use your network. If you don't necessarily understand something that's on site and the guy on site's giving you an explanation and you don't understand it, reach out. How do you find things out? You ask questions. I mean, it's a muscle that we don't exercise enough and that we should. But again, if you want to be present, I would suggest to be, because then you're going to learn about your house. You're going to learn about code and ask questions to the inspector on site. Like, well, what if it was like this and stuff like that? Then you're again exercising your learning.
Yeah, and I think having both. I think you being there and the contractor with the building inspector, especially, again, assuming you're not maybe the most experienced with renovations as the person being in there, and your contractor is, you want to know kind of any issues that come up, but also, so it's good for you to be there during a building inspection if you're able to, or someone you trust, but it's good for the contractor to be there because the inspector's going to have possibly questions. Be like, oh, well, what about this? Or, oh, no, this doesn't look like it passes. Oh, actually, we double top plated it and here's pictures of it, right? Oh, perfect. Then that's fine. So having the contractor who did the work kind of on site can help because they can kind of explain, or if there's an issue, which inspections fail regularly, your progress inspections, things, oh, actually, I want to see it this way. Okay, it's a different way. You're requiring us to do it that way. Fine. But being on site, you can now ask, okay, well, how do you want it that way? Right? Like, what does that look like for you? What would you like changed? And so just understanding what that is so that you can then make sure it's done and that the contractor understands what needs to be done is valuable there. Okay.
Any inspections too is that the city may not give you a clear-cut answer as to what they want done. They just want you to comply to code, kind of thing. So then at that point, if it seems like you have nowhere to turn and your contractor doesn't know, remember that at the beginning of the project, you reached out to your stakeholders to draw this design and that are very well versed in Ontario building code or the building code of your municipality, wherever it may be, and an engineer. So you can lean on them as well. Keep in mind, you already paid them to draw this up. So, I mean, that advice is essentially already paid for. So,
yeah, great. Before we move on to the next segment of the show, any tips for dealing with smoker houses that have been smoked in heavily? The walls are coated in nicotine. How do you deal with that?
I mean, something that we've done successfully is and it's worked out. I was skeptical at first, was buying as much TSP as possible. You can buy it off the shelf and then just taking mops and just rubbing the walls down, all over the place, completely. And then, there's this other cleaner is Mr. Clean Freak. If you use that, it really does clean it up. That's actually on Luke's TikTok as well, if you guys want to check that out. It's crazy how good this stuff works on nicotine.
Yeah, and it's almost like a two-step, right? First, clean with TSP, trisodium phosphate. They sell it in the paint aisle at Home Depot. You do have to rinse walls afterwards or use another cleaner. And that breaks down the oils in the nicotine that bind it to the wall. So it helps clean it off because that stuff sticks everywhere, right? Yeah, and like you said, and then either a second round with that or a different cleaner. This is where it's really heavily smoked in. Okay. What's next?
And then, like make sure they dry up. And then after that, hit it with, like a stain blocker, you can go with an oil base with like a Kills or a Bains or something like that. Or you can spend a little more and get something water based. But to be honest, I mean, with the amount of work that you're going to probably have to do in something that's smoked that hard, I would suggest to go with the oil base, open the windows, make sure you're in a well-ventilated area, and just really, really hit those walls and hit those ceilings to get rid of that smell. You can't just hit it with a regular paint. It will bleed through. It will come back. We've learned that.
Yep.
And the other thing too is your oil-based buckets, don't put lids on them or anything or rags in them and cover them up because it's oil-based. They will spontaneously combust and they are a fire hazard.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've dealt with a few houses recently that one of our rentals that burned down, and then another two houses that we bought that were fire damaged that we bought as flips. So definitely I can understand that as a concern. And yeah, that's an oil-based primer. Sometimes we prime, the subfloor too. Like we're trying to lock in, seal in these smells everywhere we can. Another thing you can do kind of before and after priming is after everything's been cleaned up, running an ozone generator in the house. You can get, the quality's not great, but you can get an inexpensive couple $100 ozone generator on Amazon. Run that in the house. They are toxic. Ozone is not something you want to be breathing in. So you run it when nobody's there, run it over a weekend, run it throughout the house. And then when you shut that off, it actually kills a lot of those smells. So you could do that, clean the walls down, then you run an ozone generator, and then you're priming with the oil-based smell blocking primer, stain blocking primer to lock in any further smells behind it. And then if there's any smells, kind of left afterwards, you run the ozone generator again. I will say you almost have to take care of every surface. You can't just clean up the walls, but then the kitchen cabinets are still coated in it and you're not doing anything. They either need to be, painted as well, or if they're kind of not a porous surface, it might just be coated in the stuff and it needs just a really good cleaning. So this works best when you're really stripping down all the cosmetic stuff, before doing it. But anything that's kind of staying, even, your windows, the windows need a deep clean because it's amazing how foggy they get covered in nicotine. So smoking is that
thermostats either needed to be cleaned or changed because there was no way we were going to get the yellow off from them.
Yeah. And
your vents too, like in the floor as well, clean them out, spray paint down them if you can.
Yep.
Clean the vents if you have the budget as well.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Sometimes they need to be changed. We've had to change the ductwork depending on how bad it is. Another thing too is we've run, we're maybe not in the worst ones, right? But where we did want to help get rid of the smell is running the ozone generator into a return air and just turning the fan on the furnace. So for an extended period of time, you're just recirculating the ozone generator air through the ductwork specifically, right into the return air. So it's going through the furnace specifically and through the ductwork. So that can kind of help kill the smells in the ductwork. So yeah. With that, Allan, let's move on to the next segment of our show. We usually, since we're mainly talking to investors, we talk about the best and worst deals they've done or favorite and least favorite. I'd like to talk about your favorite and least favorite renovation projects that you've had to handle for us. Let's talk about your favorite one first. Tell us about your favorite, the favorite project you've had.
I have quite a few favorite ones. If you want to talk about a project that was just challenging and it just seemed like it was going to never end, and whatever, I would say that would be Winlock, or whatever. So this was it was a semi-detached in the PN, really sought after neighborhood. The homeowner, the seller noticed that just got her roof done and got screwed by the contractors. It leaked into her house forever. Literally, I don't know how she lived there because the subfloor was so rotten. She had to put a block to walk across the floor so that she wouldn't fall through the floor. Black mold throughout the the shared wall in the house, all the way from the ceiling on the second floor all the way down to the basement. And it wasn't a small house; it was a 4-bedroom house. But we did a really good job there. And it's not like we did anything special. Like, we opened up a wall, we put in like from between the kitchen and the living room. And it was really simple to do, just because it was well framed, the house. Everything that I thought was behind the wall in that one situation. We did the kitchen, we did an accent wall, we did some flooring, we did carpet up and down the stairs. We reglazed the bathtubs. We didn't really redo anything. We did some new vanities, but it was just a challenge all around, that job. But and in the end, it turned out well. We did well, kind of thing. And then I think of something that ran really smoothly was something that Luke and I talked about, was like Hetherington. That was another one or whatever. And it was like, at first it was just it was like a garden home in like a pretty rough neighborhood. I didn't think we were going to do very well. And it just went really smooth. It was just, we told the painter, like, listen, if you do more than 2 coats on the wall, like, you're fired, like, kind of thing. And we took down a cabinet in the kitchen to open it up and just did, some light patchwork and did the floors, and that was it pretty much. And yeah, it was a success. It just went really smooth from beginning to end. And we did a lot better on it than we thought we were going to.
Yeah, we did 20K reno in 2 weeks and then had it listed and sold in a few days. It was, I think the total time we owned it, with the reno time, sale time, and closing of the sale, I think we owned it like 50 days, under 2 months. It was a really, really quick project. So that one was really nice. What do you think it is about those 2 projects you gave that make them some of your favorites? Well,
it was definitely an attachment to the area. Was part of it. I guess the other thing was just, it's not that we went overboard in terms of aesthetics, but the one thing I miss about like the olden days before I worked for you was like kind of that custom stuff I used to do and stuff like that. And this one was one of the first ones that we went and did a kitchen in and did some of the things in. So at the time, I was pretty excited. And then I guess in terms of the garden home or whatever in the rougher area of town, the one thing that I kind of liked about that was just how smooth it went. How the contractors were just we kind of jived, they understood, and we just kind of just made it happen as a team.
Why do you think it went so smoothly?
I think it was just we were just clear up front, and I think it was just the property was really easy to do that on. Like the way that the house was, it was really easy to do that in that house, being the fact that it wasn't overly smoked in. There wasn't like huge holes in the walls, or the doors or stuff like that. The electrical wasn't a mess. I was working with something that had pretty good bones as it started, because it's a garden home, like it's attachable size.
Yeah.
So
well, and I think it's also was the crews we used. We used crews, we used the painter and then the construction crew that we had used many times before. They knew what we were, looking to do. We knew they're efficient and quick. So I think there was an element of like, this wasn't a new project dealing with trying to figure each other out. The contractors, they knew what we were looking for, and they were able to make it easy on us really and blast through what we were looking for. So I think that simplified things as well. So cool. Let's move on to your least favorite deal that you've done.
Well, so the first one we did in this neighborhood in Barhaven, where we actually just listed another one like today. I think it went live.
Yep.
That house was like, there was like dog feces, cat feces everywhere. We showed up on site. The neighbors already hated us, even though they didn't know us, because there was basically like rats and scum living in the backyard. And it was just like, I remember bringing the contractors on site, and they were like, what did we do to you? Like, why did you bring me here? And why are you asking me to work here? Kind of thing. And yeah, like it was just the smell that was really bad, and just dealing with that spot. And then the AC broke, and it was like starting to get hot. That's one. I've got a few like least favorite situations, but in the end, it turned out great. It did. It turned out to be a great deal. We ended up doing the kitchen, and we did well on it. And I think we sold it in like 2 days. Didn't we?
Yeah, and we did very well on it. And I remember that one during the reno. The hard part was we kept doing more and more, trying to get deal with the smell, because they had just, the dog pee and feces had just soaked into subfloor, and we were having to swap out subfloors to new, and we just kept digging, and then trying to clean back as far as back. We changed a bunch of the ductwork we had in the end. We kept going on this from just pet smell, and we still did well on it. I'd ask kind of any lessons you learn on that project, that you'd apply it.
We really honed in our process of to get smell off. We really honed it in. That's when we got the ozonator. Well, really ran the ozonator and the return air and stuff like that. So yeah, I took that away from that. And yeah, I think it also got our foot in the door to get us the next lead that we're closing on, that we're listing today too as well. And in the end, the neighbors all liked us and stuff like that. And it really kind of got me, communicating with the neighborhood and stuff like that, and as to what we do. And yeah, it was an interesting deal. If I think of, I guess, another one that I know I'm going to surprise you with this, is another one that I really didn't like, and it was just, I was more disappointed with the outcome, was Watson. I was really disappointed with that outcome, because that house was awesome. That was an awesome house,
and there were some big problems with it that we fixed, and because of that, the reno went more than we wanted, and it didn't sell the way we wanted it to. Yeah. And that's the thing I'll say to anyone, we're talking a lot about flips here. Some of them, sometimes you get lucky and it sells for much more. Sometimes we even have properties that sit for a while on the market, barely any showings for 20 days, 30 days. And then suddenly 2 people offer at the same time and they're competing. And now you're selling it for more than you were expecting after it was sitting with no interest for a while. So sometimes you get lucky like that. And then sometimes other ones, we had another one north of Toronto where, we had an offer on it, but it was in a complex where they had to approve the owners, and there was pet limits. And they didn't approve these buyers because of their pets. And now we're selling this for $50,000 less than those other buyers who just didn't get approved by the complex. And it's just unlucky. But then on the other side, we had situations where we sell it for $50,000 more than we think we should, and then we have situations where we sell it for 20, in this case up to $50,000 less than we think we should. And you hope, if you're consistent, it evens out, or you do better than you should be, rather than less good than you should be. So some go well, some don't. And there's a bit of luck and timing to it. You play the odds the best you can, but you don't always know what that result's going to be. And that's an advantage of doing several of these deals rather than, having one deal only, kind of every few years. Is if it goes well, it goes amazing for you. But if it goes poorly, that's your only deal that's going poorly, right? And that can be, So for us, it kind of averages out across enough of the deals. So, yeah. With that, Allan, let's move on to the final segment of our show, where I have a few round-off questions for you that I'm going to modify a bit. What has changed about your approach to managing construction with your experience?
Well, just the fact of negotiating day rates. I don't go for fixed contracts anymore. There's no set in stone, this is the Bible, scope of work. You do any work outside of this, that's on you. Don't send me an invoice for it, kind of thing. So that has definitely changed. And then also just grinding contractors as much as I can, trying to really grind that price down and everything. Because at the end of the day, it comes out of our bottom line, right? So, just really kind of changing that. And then also landscaping, dealing with landscaping. That's all new for me,
Yeah, because curb appeal is very important on houses. And we've had some houses where, the inside's beautiful and the outside doesn't really reflect it. So yeah, definitely. You want it to look nice when they pull up. And often that first picture on the MLS is going to be the outside. So you want, some flowers and some plants and pretty garden bed and not full of weeds, right? And in the summertime, it's that maintenance on it too, right? It's making sure the lawn's mowed and things are trimmed and weeds are taken care of and stuff like that. So that if you're listed for, a little bit longer, so it still looks good during that time. This next question doesn't have to be construction related, but just be general. If you could go back in time, what's one piece of advice you'd have for a younger you?
Definitely don't go into construction. Like go into go into construction, but don't go into building. Like I would have gotten into this much sooner.
Into like managing
construction. But like for, if it wasn't for you, for like a real estate firm or something like that, where, they one of those, like, well, we'll sell your house or we'll buy it kind of thing. And then after that, going into it like that, and doing that, because this is a lot more interesting to me. And I think, I just think it's cooler. It appeals to me a lot more.
Nice. Cool. All right, Allan. With that, we'll wrap up. If anyone has any questions for you, or I know you're open to kind of taking on a few projects for investors in the Ottawa area. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Is it possible to add like a photo of my business card or whatever?
Not easily, especially people who listen to it on the podcast audio.
So they want to get in touch with me.
Maybe just your email.
613-884-1715. Or my email is construction@bliss, BLISS, realtyinvestors.com.
Awesome.
And that's for if you want a job or if you just want to pick my brain. I don't mind being your network, or your spare brains. Feel free to reach out.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Allan. I think I hope people who are dealing with construction or looking to do more of it in their investment business will find this really valuable. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you.